If you had a child that inherits $1 million when you pass away and it goes right into their lap with no strings attached, would they make good decisions with it? My name is Michael Pevney. I am an estate planning lawyer and I create estate plans for families in California. And in this video, we are going to be talking about how to use a trust, specifically a type of trust called a spendthrift trust, or a trust with spendthrift provisions that can ultimately protect that child or your beneficiary from making bad decisions with your money, your legacy, whether that is real estate, life insurance, other financial accounts, or the like. So my name is Michael Pevney. I'm an estate planning lawyer. I create estate plans for California families. Ask an estate planning question in the comments and follow me for more estate planning information. I got a bunch of videos out there. So what is a trust first? A trust is a document that says what you want to happen to your property and your stuff, both while you're alive and after you pass away. Many people set up a living trust while they are alive. And what a trust does, and one of the benefits that a trust has over a will, is that it gives you some control from beyond the grave, so to speak, meaning that you have a choice on how your beneficiaries inherit things. It doesn't just go to them in one lump sum with no strings attached. And specifically, a spendthrift trust, or a trust with spendthrift provisions on them, we can give specific control about how people are supposed to receive things. A spendthrift trust is a type of a trust that's designed to protect a beneficiary from their inheritance from themselves, first of all, and from others, because it includes a spendthrift clause that prevents creditors, meaning people they owe money to, potential ex-spouses, and even the beneficiaries themselves from getting too much money at once. And the general idea is that we want beneficiaries to benefit from this trust without having complete control over it, which gives us protection for our beneficiaries. So what types of dangers and what types of things can a spendthrift trust protect against? First, bad financial behavior. If somebody's just not good with money and they're going to blow it on cars and vacations, and by the time that our kids are a certain age, we know how responsible they are with money, and we can control how that money is spent. And it can be up until they reach a certain age, especially for little kids, or it could potentially be for the rest of their life. A spendthrift trust can protect against people who are engaging in, let's say, non-productive behavior, specifically substance abuse or addiction. That can also, a large sum of money that they inherit at once, can be hurtful to them. It can ultimately harm them. So we want things kept in a trust after you are gone to be used for their benefit, their basic health care. It can pay for rehab. It can have terms assigned to it to where they have to attend meetings or test clean, all sorts of things if there is a substance abuse issue going on. If there is other addictions like gambling or something like that, a huge chunk of money can be terrible, right? Because it's going to be gone pretty quickly. Another thing that a spendthrift trust can protect against is divorce, right? Maybe we aren't crazy about our child's spouse, our child's significant other, or maybe we have a child that is not married yet, and we don't even want that to be in the realm of possibility. Even though California is a even though California is a community property state, an inheritance is technically separate property, but once people inherit that property separately, they can give it to their spouse. They can put it in a joint account. They can use it to buy the home that both spouses live in, and that could become up for grabs in a case of divorce, and depending on how that money has been used. Also, a bankruptcy or a lawsuit, because we're not putting money directly in somebody's name, because it is being left in trust to that child or to whoever that beneficiary is, it is not subject to bankruptcy or a lawsuit, which means people can end up being less of a target for these things. Doesn't necessarily always apply depending on how the trust is set up, but if we're not putting things into somebody's name, and if it is a well-written trust, a well-written spendthrift trust, it is going to avoid those issues. So now that we've set up the terms of how a trust is to be administered and how our beneficiary is going to receive things, who's in charge of the money? So first of all, when you set up a trust, a living trust, a revocable living trust, you, the person that creates the trust, you're in charge of things while you're alive. You can do whatever you want. It's still your money. You can give it to your kids if you want. You can keep it for yourself. You can have the last check you ever write bounce. But what happens after you pass away is we have to have somebody else in charge, the next trustee, and they are duty bound, if they choose to accept that job, to do what the trust says. And it's very important when we have a spendthrift trust and we have specific terms attached to this trust that the beneficiary, the person that's going to benefit from this, is not also the trustee. So we need to have a responsible third party in charge. We need to have somebody that is responsible with money. They don't have to be a genius. They're always going to, a financial genius. They're always going to be able to go and get help from a financial advisor or a lawyer or an accountant, that sort of thing. But they need to be willing and they need to be generally responsible with money. They need to be pretty well organized because it's going to be important to keep records. And they most importantly have to follow the terms of the trust and have an understanding of what your intentions are, and they need to be able to say no. If somebody is really demanding money for what they say is an amazing real estate investment or something that you think and sort of raises your antenna about maybe what's not a great idea, they need to be able to say no to that. So the relationship between the beneficiary and the next trustee can be important. And so if we have siblings, we got to make sure that one sibling is going to be able to say no to each other. So sometimes that next trustee can be a trusted family member. It can be a close family friend that's financially savvy and willing to do it, or we can actually have a professional fiduciary in charge of things, a professional trustee. Every bank has a trust department. There are also professional fiduciaries out there that their job is to administer these trusts, and they are going to stick to the letter of the law as the trust says, and they're going to be willing to say no when they need to say no. And so when a trust distributes things for a beneficiary, it doesn't necessarily even have to go into their names, into the beneficiary's name as an individual. What it can do is pay things directly, pay bills directly on behalf of that beneficiary. They can delay access to this money until whatever age you have decided when you created this trust, whether that's 25, 30 or beyond, or maybe there's no age-based distribution at all and this trust exists for the rest of their life. We can set milestones that are not based on age, whether that's having a job, getting a degree, if there's a substance abuse issue, remaining sober for a certain amount of time, and it can even require things like drug test or treatment compliance and that sort of thing. So why set up a trust like this in the first place? Like why are we doing this? And as I said earlier in this video, we want people's inheritance, your legacy, to help people and not harm them. And if people are too young, or they make bad decisions with money, or they have a spouse that has a little bit too much influence in their lives, hopefully we are not punishing our kids who are typically going to be our beneficiaries. We are ultimately protecting them. And that inheritance can either be a blessing, sometimes it can be a burden depending on how it's received. So a trust with spendthrift provisions allows you to lead a legacy and not necessarily a mess. So just to kind of wrap up, who again should consider setting up a trust with these specific type of provisions? It's when your child is maybe in a rocky relationship, or you're not crazy about their partner or their spouse, somebody that just has a bad relationship with money and is not going to be able to handle a large chunk of money on their own. Somebody that's with substance abuse is either in recovery, or maybe they've relapsed, somebody that has a gambling issue, or just maybe that is not financially savvy themselves. We want to put a third party in charge of how they receive that. Now, this is just a specific type of trust, or a trust with specific provisions. But in general, my thoughts are that anybody, at least who lives in California, that either owns real estate or has kids under the age of about 30 or so should be setting up a revocable living trust as that central estate planning document. So if you have any questions about this or anything else related to estate planning, you can drop a comment in the comment section, and I'm going to get back to it as best I can. I usually respond to comments that have something to do with the video. Sometimes I'll even respond to a comment by making a video. Once again, my name is Michael Pevney. I am an estate planning lawyer setting up estate plans for families across the state of California. If you have any questions about this or anything related to estate planning, you can always set up a time to talk about your own estate plan for free by going to my website, ocestateplanlawyer.com. You should find a link in the description here, and please go ahead and follow me on whatever platform you are watching this on for more estate planning information. There's a decent chance that if you have an estate planning question, at some point I've answered it in a video, because there's over 1,000 out there. So thank you for your time, and thank you for your attention.